I just tried out this new burger place in my neighborhood, right down the street. It's called Street Burger, actually. And they not too bad. It kind of remind me of, what is that burger joint in LA, the popular one? With lines and lines and lines of people. It's just evading my memory. What's the name of that burger joint? Not Five Guys. In-N-Out Burger. Yeah, they kind of remind me of In-N-Out Burger because it's basic burgers, right? Basic ass menu. Basic burgers, just burger and fries. That's their menu, essentially. But they got some good burgers. I'm glad I went over there to try them out. It's called Street Burger, and they told me that that's their third location. They got 2 in Lower Manhattan. But anyway, let's jump into this video because I don't know how long I'm going to be here given that my battery is already somewhat low. So let's do this. So this topic actually was laid on my heart. Hold up. Hold up. I'm gonna drink some juice. I gotta re-up on me some incense, yo. These incense I'm using now, they cool, but it's not the ones I usually, my go-to. The ones that come directly from India. But anyway, so I was inspired to do this video from just my own personal reflection on how I have developed over the years with respect to my belief system and just my belief system, my paradigm, which obviously directs the course of my life choices, who I choose to intermingle with, who I choose to date. Like, it goes to show how much our belief system, right, affects who we are. And who we are obviously has an impact on how we show up in the world, who we choose to interact with, right, who we're attracted to. So just the other day I made a video on choosing a life partner, and I was talking about a recent encounter that I had with this guy from a dating app where we were getting to know each other, and we haven't met, like we never met face to face, and I was very attracted to him on a physical level. Deep, dark, smooth, beautiful, double chocolate man. But I was turned off just by the way he speaks, right? And his thoughts, his perspective. And he began to, do the whole Jesus talk and, talking about Christianity. And for me, that's a turnoff. It shows where a person is developmentally in their spiritual journey. And I know we're all at different points, right? We're all at different phases in our life. But it just shows that definitely he's not where I am. And so I lost complete interest and I was completely turned off, and that was the end of that, right? For us getting to know each other. I'm just like, I can't. And I was receiving comments on that video, and someone was leaving like a bunch of comments back to back on my video. And it became annoying because they were like, oh, praise God, just praise Jesus. All you got to do is just have faith and all of this kind of Jesus talk. And I'm like, okay, either this person is trolling or this person didn't watch the video. Now, if this person is trolling, they can see clearly that I specifically stated, it was made clear in the video that I was turned off by this guy, this potential dating partner, because he has been brainwashed, right? He's still under that indoctrination of Christianity, which unfortunately it guides his, interactions, his life choices, and how he interacts with women or whatever. And that's just a turnoff for me. To each his own, right? But that's just not my cup of tea. So for this person to be commenting on my video saying these things, I'm like, yo, he got to be a troll, or his ass didn't watch the video, right? But either way, I end up blocking this person because it goes to show, like, yo, I'm serious about this. Don't freaking try me. I'm so serious about this. And this is my space, right? This is my space that I choose to create videos to express myself, right? We don't have to agree. We're not going to agree on everything. But I do, and I like to will people into my space, this realm, that are like-minded, that I can identify with, people that can identify with me, people that respect my belief system. I really have no interest in anything other outside of that, right? So perhaps you stumbled across my videos, my page, and you feel like, oh, she seems cool, whatever, whatever. But, you know, after you get to watch a few of my videos, I may not be your cup of tea, and that's fine. I'm not trying to be everyone's cup of tea. But I will say this, that if you on my page, you're going to have to respect what I'm saying. And don't be a nuisance, right? Don't be a troll, because you're going to find yourself on the block list and you're not going to be able to comment on any of my videos. So that's what happened to that person. But then this, you know, also allowed me to further reflect on how far I've come. Considering, yes, I used to be born and raised like in the church. Going to church every day. Yo, my very first book that I ever read was the Bible. And that's before I even started school. I was reading the Bible. My dad introduced this to me. Reading the Bible, given that, you know, I grew up in a Christian household, right? We were going to church. The church that we went to was in Jacksonville, Florida. That's where I grew up at. It's called Hope Chapel, really large church. My dad, he actually used to do work for the church. He used to cut grass, like do the upkeep of like the maintenance of the grass, the groundskeeper. That's, I think that's what you call it, groundskeeping. And like, I think he did like some videos, you know, cinematography for the church, videography work, because he was a cameraman. So like, we had like a big involvement in this church, right? And we would go there like almost every day, it seemed like. Bible study, church school, church service on Sunday, and evening service, and just all these different services, right? So yes, I was born and raised in the church. It's just part of our life. It's a lifestyle, essentially, right? It's not even something you thought about or had to question. It's just like, okay, this is what was expected. You get up and you do this, right? And for me, I loved it, right? I wasn't opposed to learning about these mystical teachings. In fact, I was very fascinated by it, right? I felt like it resonated with me. This whole idea that there is an entity that basically created the entire world, right? Just by speaking it into existence, and seeing it and believing it and speaking into existence, right? And then from that, this entity came in the human form and showed up as a man that they called Jesus Christ, right? I thought like that was like really amazing and powerful and inspiring. And that this person died, was crucified, you know, because his teachings were so antithetical. It was so controversial and so against what people believed and stood by during those times, right? So this person became a martyr. This person became this figure that majority of people hated, but so many people admired and wanted to become and to reflect their lives based upon this person. That to me was something that I looked up to, right? Like the idea of it, the ideology, I think, of this story, this history that is depicted in the Bible was something that I actually was heavily inspired by, right? And when I was young, I always been like this very curious person. Like, that's just who I am even today. When I was a little girl, I used to ask a bunch of questions. I would sit at my father's feet and just ask questions. And he would be able to answer most of them, but there were some questions he could not provide an answer to. We're going to get into that, Carl. There are some questions that he could not provide an answer to. And I remember the very first book in the Bible that I was drawn to was the book of Revelations. Mind you, I was exposed to the Bible and Christianity. Like, before I could even read, I had a Bible, right? Before I even entered grade school and kindergarten, like, I knew how to read, essentially. I was reading the Bible. That's my very first book. So when you got Christians that try to come to me and assume a certain position as if they are teaching me up, right? As if, like, I haven't been there and done that. Like, you're talking to an ex-Christian, so to speak, right? Like, I was that Christian that tried to reform people, right? And christen people and preaching into them. Like, I was that person. It shouldn't be a surprise because I'm highly spiritual. And so I entered grade school, and I remember in elementary, we're talking about elementary school. Like, look at most elementary school kids. What are they doing? They're definitely not sitting in their bedroom studying the Bible. That was me, though, however. Like, that's what I was doing. I actually formed a study group with my best friend. I'm not going to say her name, but I had a best friend back in elementary school where I would call her on the phone. She'd also would come over to my house, and we would read the Bible, scriptures in the Bible for hours. I had my own Bible study group. Okay, this is in elementary school, so I'm like, I don't think people quite get it, right? I used to tell, like, Bible stories to my cousins just in my leisure time. All right, I did this even through college. So I remained a Christian from birth all the way through. It's funny because I remained a Christian all the way up through my 30s. So I'm 38. So it's not too long ago when you think about it. And I'm going to tell you guys my walk. I've been through a lot. I'm not going to, like, touch every single thing, but I've come a very long way. And anybody who truly knows me, like, in real life can attest to this, to say that, I was that girl always going to church, even as an adult, right? Even through college, even after I had graduated with my bachelor's degree, I attended Bethel Baptist Institutional Churches in Jacksonville, downtown Jacksonville, Florida. I used to go there religiously. I even indoctrinated my best friend at the time. Into this religion, right? And had him coming. Like, anybody who was my friend at that time, anybody who I was dating, I brought them to church, right? They became religious with me. They became a believer. Even if they were far away from it and weren't raised in the church, they became that with me because they liked me, and I just was a good representation of what a Christian looked like for them, right? And in a sense that, no, I was not perfect, but I was real. I was down to earth. I was relatable. And that's what they looked up to. And so it was easy for, hardened thugs and men that I was involved with to want to read the Bible with me, want to discuss Christianity, want to talk about the stories that are depicted in the Bible and how it relates to our present day life, right? These were my experiences when I was, like, in my 20s. So I did fall on hard times when I was in, I would say, with my late 20s leading up to my, like, early 30s. Yeah, my 20s, right? I fell on hard times, and I went through the whole struggle phase. I was homeless for a period of time. I'm not going to go too much in detail with that. But I definitely struggled. And what I learned about the church, like, my eyes began to open. And I saw things for what they were. Not just church or Christianity or this religion, but I saw, like, things became more clear to me, right? In my reality. And it's just like, oh, this is what life is about. It's like you think you know what life is until you live through life and you experience it, and you're like, oh, okay, this is what life is really about, right? And you begin to see people for who they really are. And through this experience, like I learned so much. I learned things that you cannot learn from a book. You cannot learn from hearsay. You have to really just go through it. And I went through it, and I just began to see, like, you can begin to see right through people. You can begin to see, like, the true essence of people, and a veil was lifted. Because people wear a coat, right? People wear these personas, things that how they want to portray themselves to the world to be, but that's not really who they are. And I was around a bunch of Christian folk that deep down inside, they didn't have good intentions, right? So I don't want to go too much in detail, but I just began to see the world for what it was, began to see systemically how Christianity was used, and is still being used to further oppress us as African American people. It's sad, right? And began to see the brainwashing, the indoctrination, the psychological brainwashing of how this process takes place. And people just are born into a belief system. They accept it, they believe in it, they embody it, but not really questioning. It's like when you're born into a certain religion, you're taught not to question, and that's the path that you take. You just live it. Say, you know what, like, this is what I've been taught. It worked for grandma, worked for mom, worked for auntie, so this is what I'm going to do. But not really taking things into the proper perspective, to think, to ask yourself, wait, what is this? Right? What is this? So Carl says, the colonization of Christianity, it wasn't meant for blacks. If your preacher ain't preaching black liberation from white Christianity, then your preacher is part of the... Carl, you must be reading my mind, yo. You're reading my mind, but clearly the title kind of speaks for itself, and saying, you know, how, yes, there's an evolution when it comes to a person's spiritual journey. So even though, yes, I identify as a Pan-African, part of me feels, a bigger part of me, or maybe it's a smaller part of me, right? Could be a bigger part of me, smaller part of me, but it feels like there's something much deeper than that, right? It has to be something much more to the story. Just like when I was going through this exploration phase, this experience of being a Christian, and I had many questions. You know, I'm always like scratching, like, right? And yes, I was a hardcore Christian, preaching the gospel, winning people over and all of that, right? Converting people to Christianity. I still was a thinker, a critical thinker. And so me being a critical thinker, that's just who I am on my core. That hasn't stopped. So even as a Pan-African, it's just like, perhaps there's more to the story. So I'm glad you said that, because you're definitely reading my mind. And that's definitely the perspective that I take. And that's something that we should ask ourselves, right? Like, you don't want to impose a certain perspective on people who you know are diehard, let's say, Christians, right? Like, they're sold on this idea, and in an opposing perspective, you're imposing that, you know, people tend to see you as a threat, right? A threat to their existence, to their survival, because people's livelihood depend on this belief system, right? Like, everything about who they are, their identity, is rooted in this belief system of Christianity. So when you're presenting a different perspective, what I find to be helpful is, yes, you and I can have this discourse, right? People of the same perspective and belief system can have a certain discourse and be able to speak these statements with conviction, right, and with clarity. But what I find to be even more helpful is when you're around a certain circle, especially this video is made public so other people will see this, is to ask questions, to pose questions so you can allow people to think for themselves and come to their own conclusion. Right? Because I'm definitely not here to convert no damn body. Right? No, I don't really have time for that. But I am here to share my own personal experience, and people can take what they want and do what they want with it. Right? So it's important, I think, yes, to pose questions and to see how people answer, to see how people approach that question. Right? Have they even considered that? And then that's where this metamorphosis begins to happen. Change really begins to happen. A lot of people are waking up. And I'm going to tell you how I came to evolve and wake up from this indoctrination. And it's so deeply rooted in who we are. It's like in our DNA. We're talking, like when I say I was born in the church. And it got even deeper when I experienced what it was like being a part of my mom's roots, right? That was more so like, okay, when my mom and my dad, we were all together as a family. You know, that's the household I grew up in. We went to Hope Chapel, and this is in Jacksonville, Florida, right? So fast forward from that, when my mom and my dad separated when I was 12 years old, I went to live with my mom in St. Augustine, Florida. And we're talking about, like, St. Augustine is the oldest city, right, in the U.S. So we're talking about going back in time, essentially, yo. That shit is so antiquated in a lot of ways, the culture there. And so my mom's church was Mount Carmel Primitive Baptist Church, and a lot of their practices were very, like, old school, right? I'm talking about, we still did the foot washing. Every first Sunday, washing each other's feet, kneeling down to wash each other's feet. Did the communion thing and all of that. We're talking about these traditions, these religious practices that are so ingrained in who we are. It just becomes who we are, and we don't even take the time to ask questions, to wonder. Say we are communal people. So you said it's part of the sorry. You said it's part of the problem. He is the oppressor's head Negro. Exactly. Christianity is not communal. I'm going to send you something in your inbox. Listen, if anybody wants to send me something, you can send it to my inbox, but I don't check my inbox messages. What I check is my email. I check that many times throughout the day. So if you really want to reach out to me, I encourage you to send it to my email. The reason why I say not my inbox is because with inbox, especially Facebook, you have to have Messenger to check it. That's a separate app, and I don't download Messenger on my phone because it takes up space. So I rarely check my Facebook messages. So yes, please, if you really want to reach out to me and you have something to say, just send me an email, which is authordleach@gmail.com. And if you know me in real life, then just send me a text. That's the best way to, I think, communicate with me. But yes, Christianity definitely has been used to further oppress black people. And it's a matter of coming to an awakening, coming to an understanding, an awareness of what's happening on a socio-political level. This is where you don't just get so engrossed in singing songs and that make you feel good, and going to church and reading the Bible, you know, as a religious practice. You're just doing it out of routine, but not really understanding the context for which this religion was created and is further being perpetuated, right? And the tool that is being used to further oppress us as black people. It's a painful, I think, reality for some, because they're like, okay, well, if we experience this shift in paradigm and belief and it's taken away from us, and we turn away from Christianity, then what do we have, right? That's a lot of people's fear. But I think that it's really a matter of calling. Like I said, I'm not on here to try to convert any damn body or convince anybody, right? That's never been my interest when it comes to just sharing my experience with my evolution and converting from Christianity to Pan-Africanism. But it's really a calling, it's an awakening, it's an experience, and it's just something that you have to go through to experience it. So, like I said, I was a Christian all the way from birth to elementary, middle school, high school, college. Still a Christian. Yo, even through after college, I was in Atlanta, Georgia. When I moved to Atlanta, this was 2011. 2011. We're in 2022. So we're talking about 11 years ago. 11 years ago, I'm 38. I'm about to be 39. So backtrack. That's like 29, 28. Right? Around the age of 28 years old, I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, back in 2011. I was still a Christian then. Yeah, I was still going to church, still a believer, right? It wasn't till I moved to New York City. And something about New York, yo. Something about New York. And I met the right person, right? And so this is the reason why I value every single encounter, every single relationship. I know some people, they look at their past relationships or their exes and they have grudges and have negative feelings. But for me, I'm an alchemizer. So I look at every encounter, every situation, every relationship as valuable, right? And for some relationships, definitely more valuable than others, right? Where I recognize that, I would not be who I am today without that particular relationship. Even though I went through some shit in that relationship, which this video is not about that. I definitely went through some shit, which I've talked about before. And that's my last relationship, actually, that I had. My very last long-term relationship ended December 2017. And it started in, what was that? October? I think I met him in October 2014. So we're talking about October 2014 through December 2017. That was my last serious long-term relationship. And I went through hell in that shit, right? We met in New York City. I ended up moving to LA. He followed me out there, and it was just chaos. But I have to emphasize that particular relationship because it was that relationship through that person. And I think it was really, like I say, through. It was the spirit kind of working through him. But I was awakened in that. I want to read what you're saying. A lot of black Christianity rituals come from slavery and oppression. For instance, wearing white gloves was because blacks couldn't touch the money back then. Oh! Now you teaching me, you educating me, bring it. I love this. And church was the only way black folks was given dignity and titles, so it's hard to get away from that. Security. You are preaching. Yes, honey, you are preaching. You say lucky, set where it says lucky man. So I learned a lot. So with that last relationship, this guy, he was a former military, a Brooklynite, Jamaican, good qualities about him, right? And so I was still a Christian when I met him, right? I was still a believer. This is 2014, and I remember we were in Brooklyn. We were at Coney Island because I like nature. I like the beach, and we were going on a date, doing something I wanted to do. And I remember we were walking the boardwalk, and I'm a sapiosexual, so I bond with a guy or anyone just by having intellectual conversations just like this, right? Talking about politics, whatever. Things that it really excite me. So we were talking about religion, and we got on the topic of race and color, and his position was, my position was, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what color Jesus was. I remember this conversation like it was yesterday. I was like, it don't matter really what color Jesus is. Like, it's not about that. It's about the spirit. It doesn't matter. And the thing I think what it is like New York men. It's a lot of woke men, I would say, in this region of the U.S., right? Not just New York, but Philly, clearly with Dr. Umar Johnson. It's a lot of woke people in this area, in this region of the U.S. And they're strong-headed about it too. And so he was like, no, it matters. And, and it's funny because that encounter, it was like he was definitely convicted, right? He was so strong in his conviction for what he believed in, and I was so strong in mine. And so we were going back at this was like one of our first dates. We were going back and forth, and I was just like, oh, this shit ain't gonna work, right? Because I felt like, first of all, I like to argue, and so even when I get pulled into an argument, it's just like, right? But clearly something was there. It's a reason why our relationship lasted beyond that, as long as it did, or whatever, right? And so that date happened. That wasn't our first date. That date happened after our first date. So our very first date, he actually invited me to spend time with him at his place. Had his own apartment in the Bronx, clean, well kept, all of that, nice. And what the activity was that we watched some documentaries. It was his choice. It was like, he put him in. I got some documentaries, and it was Hidden Colors, the Hidden Colors series. And I was blown away. First of all, my favorite genre when it comes to movies is documentaries. And so we watching the Hidden Colors series, and granted now, mind you, anybody know Hidden Colors, that shit is like 3-4 hours long. It's long, right? We watching it, and I am just so amazed. You say I'm woke here. The actual picture of Jesus is the artist, Michelangelo's second cousin. Yes. You say, yeah, I remember can't win when it comes to arguing. Yeah, so we watching the documentary, and yeah, I'm just really mesmerized by what I'm seeing. I'm learning, right? And I like to learn. So I'm being exposed to something that I wasn't exposed to before, like a different perspective. Like my eyes were beginning to open, right? Just a new world that I hadn't been exposed to, which I thought was really amazing. It's just like, okay, I like history, and anybody knows, especially where I come from, they don't teach us shit in history, right? It's really all about American history, and this shit's so boring, you don't really remember nothing that you taught. Like I went to a pretty much all black school, growing up, elementary, middle school, high school, so I don't remember shit about history in U.S. history classes that I take, or I took back then. So seeing this documentary that's highlighting like our history, it was just so eye-opening. It's like I didn't learn this in school, right? I felt like, damn, I've been missing out. So then the person that stood out the most from that documentary was Dr. Umar Johnson, and then that's how I got kind of put onto him. But even then, after watching the documentary, it's even resonated with him because he's a clinical psychologist. And of course, I'm a clinical psychologist. At the time I wasn't, but I was working towards that. I'm just like, okay, I identify with this guy. He stands out. He's a character. And it just made me want to research even more. And so then it was like, okay, I put a pin in it, right? And we were still in New York City at the time. The relationship had its ups and downs, and it's very tumultuous. I ended up leaving and going to Los Angeles, just trying to escape. This guy followed me out there. So it's like our relationship clearly wasn't meant to end at that point. It continued, and then you know, all of this, we were living together. It's like me and this guy, we were just we just clicked from day one. So we like lived together from our first encounter, our first meeting. We just that's just how it happened, very organically, which I wasn't afraid of, right? And I wasn't repulsed that or opposed to. Like I welcome that. Um, and so yeah, it reached a point where okay, it got too much for both of us, right? But even in that realization, like we were still friends and still trying to work things out and all of that. And I remember it was we were going through our separation phase, and I had told him like, yo, we can't do this, right? And he ended up moving out. But he would still come by to visit me. Now he moved down the street. So granted, when I was living in LA, I was living in Hollywood, California, around the corner from like the whole Walk of Fame and all of that, down the street from it, right? So I'm still staying at the apartment that we were living in, and he ended up moving down the street. But then he would come, just sporadically pop up and visit, and his way of connecting with me, which he knew was something I was interested in, was like, oh, did you see that new video on Dr. Umar Johnson and Tariq Nasheed kind of going back and forth? And I'm just like, what? So even, I think then, like, yes, they were on my radar, but it wasn't so, I guess it wasn't so salient in the sense where, because my attention, my focus was more so on me working towards my PhD, right? That's the reason why I moved out to LA, was to pursue my doctoral degree in clinical psychology. So I'm more focused on that. But here this is, you know, kind of in the background, and it drew my attention back to it. So it was almost like that relationship was kind of like the catalyst to open my eyes even more than what they were. And I saw myself pulling more and more away from Christianity. So I think it was more so a parallel process happening. I wouldn't necessarily attribute it totally to that relationship, but that relationship I think played a major role, because this guy, yo, when I say he was radical, right? His mind was definitely kind of a reflection of Pan-African thought and practices along the lines of Dr. Umar Johnson. He had other people that he also was inspired by too. What's the guy's name? Was it Bobby Hemmett? And I remember he showed me one of his videos, and I'm just like, who is this guy? First of all, I was really, yeah, I was tickled by his accent, because I think he's from the South. He has like a Southern accent to him, just the way he talked. And so I was kind of tickled by that, and the way he talks is just kind of funny to me. So when I would watch those Bobby Hemmett videos with my ex-partner, it was more comical than anything to me. I'm just like, I can't really take this guy serious, because he's funny. He's a comedian, if anything. But yeah, he was watching like a lot of conscious. He's this very serious guy. That's my ex. He was very serious, just conscious. He had very radical views. We would get into arguments even still about just our approach to like the solution to the problem for the black community. And his thing was, you know, the answer is just to kill all white people. And then of course I'm just like, that is not practical, right? Like, how are you going to kill every single white person? So we're talking about viable, practical, doable solutions to the problems that we complain about on a day-to-day basis as a black community. And he was saying, okay, kill all white people. I'm just like, right. So we actually had debates on that in and of itself. He had this kind of, you know, very revolutionary spirit, just against the system completely, and against white people, right? Now, of course, I come from a certain bloodline, so that spirit, similar spirit, I would say, resides within me, especially passed down through my mom. Growing up, my mom grew up in a civil rights, you know, era. Actually marched with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he came to St. Augustine, Florida. So that spirit definitely is in me. But yeah, he would just go out just in public and have these like interpersonal conflicts with white people just randomly. I'm just like, yo, I'm with you though, right? It's kind of like putting me in danger. So that relationship was interesting, you know, dating someone like that. And it was dangerous too at the same time, because it's just like, okay, am I ready for this, right? How am I protected? Which he was my protector, but you know, we know how shit go down when it comes to black people, black men especially, encountering the police. So basically, in so many words, he could have easily been any of these black men who have been murdered at the hands of police brutality. Unfortunately, he could have easily been that, and who's to say he hasn't, right? It's like after we end up separating, I don't know what the hell happened to him, to be honest. I just don't. He's kind of like disappeared off the face of the earth. And I remember having a dream. It was actually more so a nightmare when I was in LA, and I had this after our separation, and I saw like a spirit enter. It didn't enter my room, but it kind of hovered over my window, peeking in. I'm just like, I jumped up, and I swear to God, this was not, like, you know how people like have dreams, right? And they're just like experiencing something in a dream, but it's not real, so to speak, right? This shit was fucking real. Like, I was like halfway woke when I saw this big black spirit, and it was a form of a man, like peeking through my window. I'm just like, what is this? And I kind of make it out to be, okay, well, maybe it's his spirit, maybe he died. I don't know. But anyway, so I say that to say, like, that definitely was, you know, and it's so layered. That experience with my ex was just, it's a lot more to that story. But that definitely, I think, helped to create a shift. So when I say there's a parallel process, it was that relationship, and also just me ascending in terms of my cognitive and spiritual awareness, right? It's difficult for a person to acquire knowledge through research and understanding and it not affect you in that way, right? And it's been said, and I think even research shows this, that the higher you go up, right, academically, when we're talking about acquiring knowledge, you're studying for hours and hours and hours, and you're exposed to so much information. We're not talking about just book knowledge, but we're talking about world knowledge, right? Life, and how systems work, right? What is really happening in our world beyond what we see on the surface when it comes to social media or on TV, right? Like, you are exposed to what's really happening, right? There's going to be a shift, right? It creates this shift within you where you're forced to see things for what they really are. You experience cognitive dissonance, which is like, wait, everything I was told, that shit's bullshit. And then you're learning, like, this is what it really is, and there's more to it than that, right? So going through a doctoral program, a PhD program, yeah, that was my experience, not just my experience, but many others, right? And this is like this is common knowledge that PhDs, MDs typically turn away from religion, right? They may have entered the program, right, a Christian or whatever religion, but they eventually go away from that. And I see how and why that makes sense, right? It's like a process. It's not a bad thing. For some, I look from the outside looking in, may say, oh, right, you turn your back on religion or God or Jesus or whatever. So it may seem like, okay, it's a bad thing that happened, but it's not. And being in my shoes and walking this journey, it's just like, this is what I needed to go through, right? Nothing better could have happened to me than this awakening. All of these processes happening simultaneously. And so now, being a Pan-African, and I feel like still this isn't the end of the evolution, right? This is definitely a part of it, but people still don't get it. Like, I'm encountering men, you know, in terms of dating, and they're like, Pan-African, what's that, right? They don't have a clue, and I feel like it's not that I can't explain it to a person, but I don't want to, right? I want to meet, when it comes to dating selection, right, or choosing a life partner, I don't want to have to explain something that should go without saying. I just feel like when a person, and this is like me speaking in terms of just dating, right, and just connecting with a person on that frequency, some things are just, you go without saying. You don't have to explain. You don't have to communicate. Like, this person automatically, like, already understands, right? Because we're on that same frequency. You don't have, like, their questions is like, why are you asking this question? The mere fact that you're asking the question shows that you're not on that frequency and that you don't have that level of understanding. What? Sad our people won't even support him. We need action, but us black hate each other too much. But there are a lot of people who do, so I think it's more important to focus on those who do. A lot of people just are still brainwashed, so it's not so much looking at it through the lens of, oh, people don't want to support that Umar Johnson. It's more so people just they're not woke. There's so many different ideologies out here that exist, right? So it's a matter of people being aligned with a certain belief system. And so even when people look at me and they come to attack me for supporting that Umar Johnson, not even understanding and realizing that it's not about me supporting that Umar Johnson, it's about me being aligned with a certain mission and frequency. It's not about me supporting him, right? Because I got attacked myself. I got berated, I got threatened, I had to take legal action. This is when I was back in LA, because people were attacking me for my public support and endorsement of Dr. Umar Johnson. It's just like, then you get to realize, like, yo, this shit is fucking political. This shit is real, right? I don't think people quite understand politics until they're smack dead in it. And you're like, oh, okay. Then it makes sense why people choose to take the safer route, right? And choose to go with the status quo of what most people believe in. Christianity is very safe. Pan-Africanism is not, right? We're talking about a movement that is very political in nature. You know, people die. People have died. People get killed for wanting to shake up the system and create almost a new system that is diametrically opposed to the one that we exist in, and that works for the people who are in power, right? Like, there's a system, when people talk about white supremacy, you know, I hate that fucking term. My ex used to say, you know, he's not gonna call it white supremacy because it's really giving power to it. If you're calling it, you're associating white with supremacy, it's like giving power to it. So it's like, I'm gonna call it the system of what it is. I used to love it. It's like, I'm just calling it the system of what it is. But yeah, you will face a lot of attack, and that's how, to me, that's very telling, and it's confirmation that, okay, you're on the right path when you are under attack by, you know, people who have a certain mission and plan against a group of people, right, within this paradigm in which we live in. So I feel like Pan-Africanism isn't it, right? Even though, yes, I identify myself as a Pan-African and I know exactly what it means, I know what it represents and what I stand for, I feel like it's more to the story than just Pan-Africanism. Right? I feel like sometimes we can get so engrossed in a certain belief system, a way of thinking and behaving, that it's almost like a cult, right? It's almost like a gang. And then I think sometimes it can be very limiting to a way of being, into life and reality. And when you think of reality, reality is how we see the world, right? It's a lens in which we look through in the world. And so you can look at the world through this lens, but just because you see the world through a certain lens doesn't mean that encompasses the entire totality of what exists in the world. And so for me, being a spiritual being and tapping into this higher level of consciousness, you are always open and aware to what is, right? And knowing that a certain limited perspective in which you view the world, or the lens in which you view the world, that's not the totality of what really is. And you're missing out and you're limiting yourself. So I keep that in mind, right? Pan-Africanism is more than just, okay, knowing your history and where we come from and identifying with that and embracing it and walking confidently and walking proudly in this identity, so that, yes, it's going to cause some friction, right? Because we know the other identity of black people wanting to identify more so with white people, and the whitewashing, being infected, negatively impacted by the whitewashing of our culture, of our identity. That's a safe space to be in, right? And you're more so aligning with this dominant structure through this whitewashing and through this safe sense of being a black American, right? Whereas Pan-Africanism is you standing firm in this identity of who you are and who you've always been, in terms of who you descended from, the ancestors, the African ancestors, the red blood of African people, and knowing that is juxtaposed against an agenda that is set to further oppress a people, so that another group of people can survive, can feel safe and secure in who they are, and the demelanated people and inferior people that they are. The shit gets deep. And so, yes, when I say that's not going to change, right? It's like when you come to this awakening, which I think has already been there, right? When you look at a tree, you see the manifestation of a tree that has grown over many years. That tree was always that tree, right? And it stemmed from a seed. But when you think of the tree in relation to the seed, the tree was the seed, right? You look at the seed is the tree, right? So just because you see a person in their current state and their level of development, they are who they were, if that makes sense, right? So who I am now and my perceived level of progressive state, I've always been this way, right? Because when you think of time, there's no such thing as time, right? We construct this understanding of what time is, and so with that time comes a chronological development, right? And so we look at it like, okay, back in 1980, you were just this size and you had this level of understanding, and then you went through these experiences, and then you've evolved into this adult woman who now embodies who she really is. And we want to put labels on it and call it Pan-Africanism, when really it's just being the person, being this entity, being this spiritual being that I've always been. I know this because I've been in my shoes. I've walked this journey, right? So I don't look at it as so much, oh, I've changed. I have come to an awareness, but I've always been this person. I've always had this awareness, this level of understanding, and begin to make sense of, oh, okay, that's the reason why I have been perceived as rebellious, so to speak, in other people's eyes, because through this rebellion, through this resistance, a person is going to naturally resist something that is opposed to who they are, is opposed to their own survival. You should naturally resist it. If you don't, then something is wrong. It's scary when you see, and I think it was mentioned earlier, it's referenced earlier, how black people subscribe to Christianity. They kind of just go along with what has been told to them, what has been taught to them, not questioning. Even if you're practicing something that has been taught to you is a threat to your own survival. Not seeing that you're shooting yourself in your own foot. You are becoming a detriment to your own livelihood. Right? I think that it really comes down to whatever state and whatever belief system that a person practices and endorses, right? It's not a matter of right or wrong. And I think this is another level of spiritual awakening. And I think this is a level that I'm kind of transitioning into that, right? In the sense that everything is right. There's no such thing as right or wrong, right? So if a person believes in Buddha, a person believes in Allah or Jesus Christ or whatever they believe in, whatever entity or higher power they believe in, is no matter of right or wrong. It only becomes wrong if you're doing yourself a disservice, right? If you're going against your own survival. But even then, and this is more philosophical thinking, right? Follow me. Even then, though, right, when it comes to what we perceive as the right way, and the right way being self-preservation, just surviving, right, so that you can continue on. And we know that certain acts that are played out within, let's say, our community, within the black community, can be detrimental, right? Black on black crime, and as you mentioned, like hating each other, right? And so if we're practicing certain belief systems, we're acting out of certain ideologies, perhaps it is a detriment to our own survival, believing that there is a higher power that looks nothing like us, that we're worshiping, and how this is being infiltrated and manifested systemically, which is further keeping us oppressed, right? That's one lens in which one can look at it, but perhaps that's necessary, right? Because when you take yourself out of the equation and look at it more objectively, perhaps we are just all each other's reflection, no matter the race, which we know is socially constructed, right? It's a social construct. What is race? Does it even exist? I like to look at things through a philosophical lens and just exploring knowledge and what could be and what is. Keeping an open mind. I see that my battery is definitely running low, but I have a few more things that I want to share because now I feel like I'm streaming. And I'm going to have to make a part 2 to this. I'm going to have to pick up tomorrow where I'm leaving off today. But in knowing, yes, that we are a reflection of each other. And is there really separation? This is going into more so metaphysics, right? And this whole game, you think of it, life is really a game. Race is really a game. And you're operating in such game in a way that you're losing at that game, right? But you're losing only because you're playing someone else's game, right? It's like you go to someone else's house and those are their toys and those are their games. Of course they're going to win because this is their game. They made the game, essentially, right? If you continue to play that game that they created to their own advantage, you're going to lose, right? So looking at it from a different perspective, coming to a higher awakening of self, that I believe is the aspirational religion, if I had to put a label on it, that I want to endorse, that I want to follow, that's even bigger than these racial constructs, these sects that are still tied to race, such as Pan-Africanism, which is still divisive, and I think it's still limiting, because I feel like there's something missing, right? There's more to it than that. Pan-Africanism, I think, is essential. Christianity played its role and is essential, but I still think it's more to the story than those, right? It's only part of it. And being able to piece every perspective, every ideology into one big puzzle, then it begins to make greater sense. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for your feedback. Definitely going to get back on here and do a part 2 probably tomorrow. But Yeah. I feel really enlivened and refreshing to see that there's always room to grow. There's always room to learn. And knowing that, I don't have all the answers. I think that's a safe space for me to be in, right? And recognizing that I do not have all the answers. But in knowing that the position that I'm in the right place, right? And whatever position that another person is in, they are in the right place, right? But I think, in reflecting on this encounter that I had with this person, the guy that I mentioned, that I referenced in my video, choosing a life partner, and just seeing that, okay, that was just a representation of what has been happening and what is happening, which I don't think is healthy when it comes to the division within the black community, so to speak, right? It's like we want to unite, but the more we try to unite, it's like to no end, because we're falling in the trap of these labels, of these gang sets, right? Of Pan-Africanism versus Christianity, right? It's like you're playing by this very diabolical system and way of thinking that is not healthy. It's not serving anyone. And then we all lose, and having to forfeit potentially good friendships or relationships with people just based on the means of fear. Really, it's really driven by fear. This person is different. They don't have the same perspective as me, right? What does that create within a person? Uncertainty. Questionable thoughts. Fear. As if it can be potentially harmful for you to go forward and interacting with a person. Of course, there's a flip side to it, which obviously was my motivation for persisting with that choice, that decision to sever that relationship, and many others that I've come across for men who want to scream and shout this Jesus talk, right? And are not really spiritually and politically grounded and aware. But yeah, if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. I feel like we're in two different spaces. We're there for a reason. And undoing that is not going to happen overnight. So what's the point, right? Which basically I'm speaking from a space of me having room to grow. Growing out of a certain kind of indoctrination and looking at anyone who doesn't, endorse Pan-Africanism, right, on that same frequency of this awareness of what's happening, or not even what's happening, but looking through at the world through a certain lens, as if that's the only way a person can look at the world through, right? Perhaps it's better, and I have to make this short and quick, perhaps it's better to just step away from all of it. Right? Just step away from all of it and just, I can see why people become agnostic or atheists. Just don't believe in anything. Just step away from all of this indoctrination, all of these teachings, right? But it seems like that would be a formless way of navigating the world and not having this guide, not having a set of principles and beliefs to direct your course of action, behavior, and your attitudes and beliefs. Like, it seems like you need something, right, to be able to navigate the world. But do you? Right? Maybe that's just what we've been taught. So yeah, I like to get into those kind of philosophical ways of exploring and understanding the world, because I can't say that I've reached a complete understanding. right? If I have, then what's the point of living? What's the point of living if you know everything and you've reached this pinnacle of understanding everything? That to me is sexy. Even as I'm speaking now, I feel a high. I'm on high right now. Like, I haven't drank anything. I do not smoke. I just feel so elated. I mean, clearly, you probably can see it. And I know sometimes I get to this point, like, often in my videos. And some people even comment and say, oh, you look like you're high, or are you drunk? Yes, I'm drunk, because all kinds of neurotransmitters are releasing in my brain right now throughout my body. It's like dopamine, serotonin, endorphins. I can feel them being released, and that's why you guys see this kind of hazy look in my eyes, because yes, it makes me high to speak in this way. That's how I know that I'm on the right path. That's how, like, your body will speak to you, right? Your mind, your body will definitely reinforce what's good. If you're doing something good, it's going to reinforce that. And I feel like this is the universe's way, my body's way of telling me that, yes, stay here. Right? This is a good space to be in. But I'm about to end this video. I'm going to come back with a part 2 tomorrow. I see a few people tuned in and commenting. Share your comments. I think that we need to have more discussions like this, like in a public forum too. For me, I'm definitely kind of in my own zone, in my own world, which I find is safe for me. And I've always been this way, though. This is anything new. Even when I was yay high, I had a conversation with a colleague where I work, and he asked me, say, oh, so you live in Manhattan alone? I'm like, yeah, I live by myself. And he was like, I couldn't imagine being by myself. He was like, even when I was by myself for, I think he said he was by himself for like a month away from his family, he just felt very isolated and didn't feel comfortable. So he felt like something wasn't right. I said, for me, it's the complete opposite. I've always been this way from when I was a little girl. Back how I started this video saying how, I was reading the Bible in my room before I was even in kindergarten. Like, I've always been kind of to myself. So this is a very natural state, very comfortable way of being for me. But yeah. I'll catch you guys later. Share your comments below. Yeah, I think it's better to just be back in the beginning, as the Bible said, formless, without form. Our minds probably should be that way, without form, without shape, right? Our minds have been shaped by this indoctrination through religion, school, on what we should see and believe. But we can just go back to a blank slate where we were formless in our thoughts, in our way of being. And we're just spirit. I think some people are trying to go in that way, in that direction. Those are the people like, I don't see race, I don't see color. Alright, I definitely got to end this video. I'm at 5%. My phone is like, girl, you got to end it. But, yeah. And I feel that sometimes, too, like when I'm interacting with people who are less melanated than myself, right? Physically speaking, on the surface. And it's just like the universe works through people. And they do kind acts. They say things, and it's just like I don't think they know what they're saying, what they're doing, and what it means. But it's just like, damn, for a person to say the exact right thing that you needed to hear, and they don't look like you, right? They don't know what the hell you're going through. It's not that they're just saying something nice, so that's what makes it right. But it's just like certain things, like you have to be in a person's shoes and know their journey, to know like how is it right for that person in that very moment. They didn't know, but the universe knows, and they're somehow in alignment. So that's what makes you kind of set race aside to say, yo, it's not even about race. It's really about this spiritual, divine alignment and connection, connectedness that works through life, through people, through all life forms. And we have all been brainwashed, indoctrinated into this system of race. But, namaste, I'm going to end this video. Catch you guys in the next one.